folks, welcome back to the Broken Meeple, and it's another how to play session for today. And well, yes, okay, it's another co-op game. I suppose you could be thinking that I'm going a bit co-op heavy at the moment with these how to plays, but to be honest, that's purely coincidental actually. There's going to be how to plays on non-co-op games as well in the future. It's just when I do get asked to do more of these how to plays, co-op games do come up quite often because it's a popular genre and people want to know how they work out, particularly for the purposes of playing with their families. So this has of course been the highlight of the how to plays lately. But don't worry, there is going to be a change of theme eventually. Anyway, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, one of my favourite co-op games, one that is fantastic for families and even just gamers alike. It's one that I enjoy playing solo. It's one I always enjoy showing to new groups. There's lots of new maps for it now, including Extreme Danger and Dangerous Waters being the main official ones, and then you've got Second Story and Urban Structures as these other little mini ones that came out mainly by Kickstarters. However, if you're lucky, you might be able to get Urban Structure in the shops at various UK websites. Now what I've got set up here is a free player game, and we're going to go through the experienced game. The family game is bog easy, really easy. It's set up for you. There's a setup diagram in the book, and all the major roles like these things are taken out. Hot spots are not dealt with. You know, most of the rules aren't in it, so it's really easy to follow, and I probably suggest you do that as your first game just to get the hang of it. But I'm going to go through a typical experienced game, 3 firefighters, 3 unique roles, and I'm going to go through the whole setup process as well as a couple of rounds of play just to show you how this works. So without further ado, let's make a start with the setup round, which is usually the daunting part of the rulebook. Okay, just before we get into the setup round, I'm going to make a personal recommendation for this game, which is if you live in America, you'll call these Plano boxes. If you live in the UK, you're probably going to get them from like Hobbycraft or fishing tackle shops is where I like to go, because they sell these tackle boxes in these kind of sizes, and you can get them for various games and of various shapes and sizes, and I'm telling you, these things are amazing for storing components. I mean, I might go for a storage solution video for this game if requested, but generally you can see that a lot of the tokens fit in here with these, all the damage cubes, all the various expansion stuff, and there's room for obviously what I've already put out on the board as such. So this is recommended, and I do suggest you pick one up for this game because there are a lot of little pieces. But for now, I'm going to go through the setup process. This is what tends to be daunting when you're explaining it to new players, which is why I don't tend to go through this round with new players. I tend to just set the game up and then I teach people as I play, and that tends to work better. But just in case you want to know, here's how to set the game up. So first of all, we have the chosen board. I've chosen one of the easier maps from the base game expansion because obviously it's a bit simpler. We're also going to do this on recruit difficulty, which is the easiest difficulty, just so that there's less to deal with, and obviously I just want to show you how it typically works. So first off, you have to resolve explosions, i.e. the burning to begin with, because after all, you've been called to this house. If there's no fire, then why did you get called out here in the first place? A frat party? So you've got 3 initial explosions. So you have a red and a black dice. Around the edge of the board, there are numbers corresponding to the dice. It works as a typical grid system. You roll the die, you follow the grid to see which square it's in, and that's where it happens. So for the explosions, you roll the die, and on there I've got a 4 and a 3. 4 black, 3 red. So I've got 4 black here. I follow it down to the 3 red, and then this is where the first explosion happens. Now, when an explosion happens, you place get out of the box, a fire token on that spot. However, an explosion is when it starts in one place and then fans out to adjacent spaces. Ignore diagonals. Diagonals do not play a part in this game. It's all about adjacent. So fire has to be placed in all adjacent spaces next to that explosion. So, and dump. Oops, sorry, don't move the doors. But if it hits a wall, which is one of these obviously thick white bits around the rooms, you can see it's laid out in a typical house. I've got a bedroom here, living room here, kitchen here. That's the bathroom where the first explosions happened. So God knows what on earth was going on in the bathroom for an explosion that happened, but I digress. If it hits a wall you have to place one of these damage cubes out. Now, damage cubes in this game represent damage that have done to walls and the structure of the building. There are, I believe, 20 or so cubes in this game. If all of them are placed on the board, the whole building collapses and the firefighters lose. So these are bad and you want to stop explosions happening as a result. So these are the two adjacent walls, so a cube is placed on each of those spots. First explosion done with. You then have to also place one of these hotspot markers. Let's see if I can show up. Little hotspot marker as so, where the explosion happened. I'll get onto hotspots later, it's not quite relevant for the setup. We then have to do the second explosion. 6 red, 5 black. 6 red, 5 black, and here's the next one. On the board, especially, I'm not sure if this is the case with the expansion boards, but it certainly is with the base game boards. You can actually see the dice on there. In fact, actually, let me come round and I'll show you. If I zoom in, you can see that the dice are actually pictured on the board itself, so it's there for easy reference. So the second explosion has happened here. I now have to place fire in adjacent spaces that aren't walls. However, there is a wall here, the outside of the building, which hopefully you can see there, so I have to place a damage cube as so. For the third explosion, you can roll the die if you want, but the rule book officially states that you flip the dice to their opposite sides to represent the next explosion. I recommend you do this because what the point of this is that it spreads the explosions out across the whole building rather than just having it all condensed in one area. So now by flipping the dice, I have 2 black, 1 red. 2 black, 1 red. Explosion on the sofa. No, my precious sofa. Explosion, and 1 more damage cube. So as you can see, for this one, we haven't had to place out many damage cubes. I mean, that's a good thing, but we do have a lot of fire in this building, so it is a bit of a raging inferno at the moment. Hotspots, as I stated before, have to be placed where the explosions happened. So there we go. Now you have to, if you do it on harder difficulties, then you have to do more explosions. On veteran it's only 3 still, on heroic it's 4, and trust me, when you up the difficulty in this game, you up the difficulty in this game. I play this on veteran religiously now, but occasionally I have done heroic. I have been beaten to a pulp on heroic difficulty, however I have also won on heroic difficulty, so it is possible, but expect a challenge. Now you have to roll for the hazardous materials. Hazardous materials are these little tokens here. They represent things that could potentially explode in the middle of the house. Basically, if a fire ever hits one of these tokens, you get an explosion in the same way as that. So we just roll the dice 3 times and place them. 1, 1. However, if it lands on a fire space, you can't place it there, so you have to roll again. 5, 3. 5, 3. There's another fire. Okay, got to keep rolling until you get a space that doesn't have one. Here we go. There's 1. Right in the middle of the floor. Who would do such a thing in the house? 2 and 6. 1 in the kitchen. That kind of makes sense. And 8 and 4. 8 and 4. Something in that kid's bedroom. Right. Won't digress as to what that could possibly be. Probably not right for this kind of video. Now, after the hazardous material markers, you now have to place the first 3 victim point of interest markers, which are these little blue things here. The reason they come up as question marks is because obviously you haven't got psychic powers, you don't know whether there's a victim there or not. So they are placed on the board and you have to go check them out, but they could be false alarms, so you might have wasted your time to get there. There is a character who's good at finding this sort of thing out, but he's not present here, so we're going to have to just look for them and hope for the best. So first one, 5 and 8. 8, 5, 1 there. 6 and 5, 1 there. He is about to seriously get roasted. And 1 and 5. 1 and 5. So we got 2 relatively safe, and we got 1 who's in serious trouble. Can't help with that. Now after this, each player takes one of their specialist firefighter cards, and there's a lot to choose from. Bearing in mind I've expanded this game, so there's a few in here you won't recognise from promo packs, and there's a couple of reference sheets in there. But generally there is quite a few to choose from, and they've all got very nice and useful abilities. For this game though, I've chosen a mix of 3 to cope with the various roles that you have. First we have the Rescue Specialist. Here we go. Rescue Specialist. Now, the idea of the Rescue Specialist is that they're not very good at putting out fire, because as you can possibly see, it costs double for them to do so. But they get some extra movement points, and they're very good at chopping through walls, so she is basically going to go hunting for civilians. You then have the Generalist. He basically has more action points on his turn. You might notice there that says 5 rather than 4 from the previous one, but he has no other special abilities. So he's a jack of all trades. I can get him to do what I feel like. I then also have the Driver Operator. Now the driver is basically glued to the fire engine, but he gets to fire it twice in a turn and re-roll the die to see where it hits. Very useful ability. You will notice that I placed colour cards underneath each one. That is just so to mark them on the board. In the base game you get coloured plastic miniatures to represent your firefighters, and they're all generic. I have Extreme Danger though, so I've got these really cool sort of pewter plastic miniatures that are unique for every firefighter role, along with the coloured bases to put on the bottom. So there we have 3 firefighters that I can clearly distinguish between each one. In fact, I'm going to show you these actually because they're really cool. There you go, 3 unique firefighters. We've got the Rescue Specialist there with the chainsaw. We have the driver there with the sort of control panel on top of the fire engine, and the Generalist, who is basically run and gun mode. We now have to place additional hotspots on the board. When you up the difficulty in this game, you have to place a lot more. However, all we have to do here is place 2 additional hotspots because we are playing with 3 or more firefighters. If we were playing with 4 or more firefighters, I'd have to place 3, and I'd have to place an additional 3 if I was playing at Veteran or Heroic. So I merely have to place another 2 of these hotspots. Same manner, roll the die, follow the chart. A lot of this is following the chart. Now there's already a hotspot on that space, so roll again. 2, 6. 1 directly on top of the hazardous material. Great, that's not good. 3, 3. And 1 straight on top of the other hazardous material. Okay, that was pure bad luck. We really do not want these things going on fire, so yeah, not a good thing. You then keep 6 hotspots spare, put the rest back in the box, and you're almost ready to go. All you now have to do is just place your firefighters on the board and choose where the fire engine and the ambulance are going to be. The ambulance is where, in the experience game, you have to get your victims to. It's not enough to just simply get them out of the building, you have to take them to this ambulance. It can be driven by remote, well, in the sense that you get over your walkie-talkie and tell the driver to come and get to you, but you can also drive this yourself. On the other side, the fire engine. This is what the driver operator is going to be using in order to put out fire on a widespread scale. Now, these can be placed anywhere on the blue and orange markers around the side of the board, and it is recommended to place them near where you're hoping to go. So we've got a lot of victims on this side of the board, so we recommend that the ambulance is somewhere around here to make a start. There is an entry point here with this door, so I'm going to recommend that we place it here. Alternatively, we could place it here, but it would involve having to chop through the wall in order to get to someone, which might not necessarily be a bad idea. In fact, I might be tempted to do that, so I'm going to place the ambulance here. Now, the fire engine, we've got a lot of fire over in this corner. We have barely any in here, because it's literally just that one, and we have a fair amount here. Now, we do have a bit of a problem with this victim about to get roasted, so we need to really put out this fire quickly. But there is a lot of fire over there, so I'm torn between the 2. I am going to say on this occasion though that it's more important to get the victim out. So I'm going to place the fire engine here. So on that basis I'm actually going to place the ambulance here, closer to this victim. That's the setup done. Oh no, sorry, we have the firefighters. They have to choose an ambulance. Well, they don't even have to go on the ambulance or firefighter. They can go anywhere on the edge of the board that they want to go. So I am going to put the driver operator on the fire engine, where he belongs. I am going to put the rescue specialist somewhere where they can chop through a wall and get to some victims quick. I'll probably put him on the ambulance here so they can go running off. However, we do have a lot of fire up here that does need to be contained, so I'm going to put the generalist here. he's going to run into the living room and start dealing with that. And with that, the setup phase is done. You have a board ready on fire with materials and people scattered around the place. You have your fire engine and ambulance and your 3 firefighters. Now it's time to save some lives. Now the turn order for this game that I'm going to do for the first round is in the order of these cards here. So the rescue specialist is going to go first, then the generalist, then the driver operator. That is all I'm going to show you of those cards, because you don't have to place much in the way of tokens on your cards, only when you're saving action points. I'll get onto that in a minute. But I'm going to zoom the camera in now so that you can see the board a little bit closer rather than having this box and the slightly redundant cards there. So bear with me 1 second. And there we go. Hopefully that will give you a closer view of the board. Now, on the turn, you have a certain amount of action points to spend in order to do your move, you're putting out fires, etc. Each character has an action point total equal to what is written on the top corner of their card. If you can see the rescue specialist one there, you can see that that says 4. And most characters have 4 except for the generalist here, who has 5. The 5 being the jack of all trades ability of the generalist. Now on your turn, you can spend your action points in various ways, mostly to move and put out fires. To move your person from one space to another costs 1 action point. To move through fire, which is not something I recommend doing very often, but you may need to, it costs 2 action points. In order to move with a victim or hazardous material, i.e. carrying, it costs 2 extra movement points. In order to open and close one of these doors, you have to flip it over and spend 1 action point. For the purposes of the game startup, the doors on the outside of the building are already open. To extinguish, I'll get on to extinguishing fire in just a second. First off, we have the rescue specialist, who's down here, whoop, there you go, on the ambulance, who has 4 action points to spend. However, her special ability, or one of many special abilities on the rescue specialist, if I can get that focus, is that she gets 3 bonus movement action points. That means that if she wants to take any movement related actions, she can get 3 bonus action points to spend. So if she focuses entirely on movement, she's got 7 action points to spend. That is quite good. However, the downside is that it costs her double action points to put out fires, which isn't so good. That means you have to work as a team, everybody else has to clear the fire away and make certain that the rescue operative is not hindered. So the rescue operative is going to go hunt down this point of interest here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's her basic 4, and we flip open this tile. Yay, it's the kitty! Oh, it's the kitty! Lovely kitty! Yes, I know, the cat is the same worth as a human in this game. That gets a lot of buzz, gets a lot of controversial reactions to that. Personally, I just find it quite amusing that you have to spend ages to save the cat. I have to admit, I've never seen the cat die in any game I've played. Every time I've played this game, I have found a cat. And I've always, even if I failed the game, I have always at least rescued the cat. I don't know what it is. I'm just a cat person. But anyway, we have the cat, so there's the first one there. It'll cost me 2 action points to then carry the cat. Let's just say it's scratching and purring and like going on too much, and it's becoming a bit of a hassle. So 2 action points to move to there. I have 1 bonus action point left on my turn. I've used up my 3 free ones to move to here, and then out of my basic 4, I've moved 1 to there, and then 2 more to get back to there, so I have 1 left. On your turn, you are allowed to save action points to a subsequent turn. These little tokens represent spare action points. If you are choosing to save any, then you take one of these tokens and place it down on your character to represent they have them for next turn. You cannot, however, save the bonus movement action points. So you have to use them up first before you start saving, because otherwise you're just going to, otherwise it gives you too much of an advantage. Now that concludes the fire rescue specialist turn. At the end of every firefighter's turn, you then have to advance the fire. And this is where things start getting out of hand, as if they haven't already. You have to roll the 2 dice and dictate where on the board a new fire is breaking out. If it's if it's not got any fire in it to begin with, it just comes up as smoke. If it's smoked, then it turns into fire, and if it's fire, it explodes. So let's see what happens. 4 and 3. 4 and 3. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's bad for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's a fire, which means it explodes. Yeah, great job, rescue specialist. You're already destroying a house. So when an explosion happens on top of where there's already fire, imagine that you just follow the chain until you get to a space where nothing is there. So in this case, normally a fire would erupt here and there'd be adjacent spaces for each of those, but there's already a fire in those. So you have to follow the chain all the way across until you get to either a wall or a space that doesn't have anything in it. So in this case, we follow the chain down and it hits a wall here. So a damage cube is placed on the board. This way, we follow the chain and it gets to a door. You don't put any damage cubes on the wall where there's a door, you simply blow the door away. And then there is nothing there. However, there are 2 walls here that are already damaged. 2 more cubes have to be placed on this spot to represent that those walls have been destroyed. A destroyed wall means that you can walk through it. Basically, there's a large gaping hole there. That's not always a good thing though, because when there is a destroyed wall, it means fire can spread through the gaps. And we have a hazardous material right next to this destroyed wall. Not good at all. The second problem with this explosion is that I rolled a hot spot. Hot spots are basically areas of the building that are more susceptible to fire. When you roll a hot spot, you have to roll the dice again and advance the fire again. So rolling hot spots continuously is a right pain. Hopefully I won't roll another one. 7, 5. Much nicer this time. There is nothing in that space, so it comes up as a smoke. Smoke is relatively harmless for the time being. However, smoke can quickly turn into fire, especially when you have a collection of smoke tiles around the place, because it only takes 1 to turn into fire for the whole lot to turn into fire. Hopefully I will show you that later on. Also, because I rolled a hot spot, wherever I put the second tile turns into a hot spot as well. So now there's more chances to roll multiple times. Not good at all. We now cut on to the generalist, who's sitting over here, just slightly out of shot of the camera. He is going to run in and start dealing with this fire because it's getting out of control over here. So 1, 2, 3. Now he has 2 action points left. In order to extinguish a fire, you have to spend 2 action points to remove the tile. So he's going to do that. He's going to spend his 2 spare action points and remove that fire. By doing so, the hazardous material has less chance of getting hit by fire and exploding. If you were next to a fire token on its own, you could spend 1 action point to turn it into a smoke. And if it was a smoke, you could spend 1 action point to take it out completely. The reason why he can't turn that into a smoke is because it's next to fire. If smoke appears at any point next to a fire token, let's say that was blank for the moment, and a smoke appeared there, because it's next to a fire, it immediately turns to fire. So you can see what I was getting at with smoke being in the condensed area. Imagine if all 6 of these places were smoke, and then that one turned into a fire. That would turn into a fire, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. You would just have the entire room on fire in one great big flash. That's how fire works in real life, and whoo, it's nasty when it happens in game. But for now, hopefully we're safe. That concludes the generalist go, so now, roll the dice, advance the fire. Hopefully we won't get another explosion. 2, 2. I spoke too soon. Seriously, am I playing this game with a bunch of terrorists here? Because I don't think they're actual firefighters. I swear these are terrorists. Because I've just rolled that spot there. No hotspot, but there's another explosion. What I don't need right now. So on adjacent spaces, fire, fire. That is a wall here. So that has to have a cube. And the chain carries on down here until you get to this wall, which is now destroyed. I'm not getting off to a good start, I must admit, and this is only recruit level. I normally do a lot better than this on veteran difficulty. Well, I blame the dice. Dice hate me. So now we get onto the driver operator. Hopefully he's going to do some good and put out some of this fire, because it is getting a little bit crazy. Now he has a choice. Drive to here in preparation for next turn and start dealing with this, or drive to the side, which will cost him 2 action points. but he would get to fire the gun once. However, he fires into the corner of a building. And there's two restrictions. One, there is a red dotted line around the corners of the buildings. That is the range from where in a space he can shoot his gun. The other restriction though is that if there is a firefighter anywhere in that corner, he can't fire the gun. Because let's face it, I'm sure in real life the driver of a fire engine is not prone to firing a high velocity water cannon straight into the face of his fellow comrades. So he's going to stay where he is and try and take care of the fire problem here. Now in order to do this, he rolls the 2 dice to see where he hits. 1 and 5. Now obviously this is in completely the wrong corner. So when this happens, you have to flip the dice to their... if any of the dice don't fall into the corner, you flip them to the opposite side. So that becomes a 2. And that becomes a... let's see, 1 will flip to a 6. And then that should put it back where it needs to be. Oh, nope, it hasn't. Okay, so flip it again, back to 5. There we go. So it lands on this space here, 5 and 6. Now he could keep that result, in which case that space and the adjacent spaces would be free of fire. He could, however, re-roll either dice because of his driver-operator skill in order to see if he gets a better result. Personally, I think that's probably the second best result he could get on the dice, so I'm going to keep that result. So splash, which splashes into adjacent areas and takes care of that fire. He now has 2 action points left, because for the driver it only costs 2 action points to fire the gun. Normally it costs 4. So he could try and aim for that particular spot. Personally, I don't think it's worth wasting an entire fire truck turn just to take care of one particular bit. So I'm going to choose to drive this round the side of the building and get a move on to over here where I think the rescue specialist needs a bit of assistance. To advance the fire for the fire truck operator, 8 and 4. 8 and 4. It's still smoke, but it is on top of a hazardous material, so that could be a problem child in the later term. And that's the first round of the game. If that's enough for you to understand the rules, then fair enough. I hope this has convinced you that this game can be a very challenging but still fun one. However, I'm now going to go through the next round and show you some further examples. Okay, let's move on to the second round of the game and see if things can, well, shall we say, improve, because they're not currently. We have the rescue specialist with the cat. Now, on the previous turn, you might remember, she saved an action point. So she now has a base action point allowance of 5. She also has the free action points for movement purposes. So her first, so with 8 points to spend, 2, 4, 6. She has spent almost all her movement to take the cat out of the building straight to the ambulance. As a result, the cat is now saved and placed on, you can't see it on the camera, but there is a space on the bottom. I wonder if I can just move it slightly. No, I won't be able to get it in view. But basically you can see this red cross symbol here where my thumb is. That is where you put dead victims. Down here there is a fire rescue shield which you put the saved victims. It's basically just a storing bit. So we have 1 victim saved. In order to win the game we have to rescue 7. Yeah, we got our work cut out for us. In order to lose the game, all those damage cubes have to be placed on the table, and let's face it, we're already placing quite a few as we speak. And also 4 victims have, or 4 victims have to fall victim to fire. I've yet to lose this game because 4 victims have fallen prey to fire. Most of the time I lose because of damage cubes. In later expansions you have other ways to lose the game, and they can be quite a problem. But generally it comes down to not being able to control the fire enough so that explosions just keep erupting all over the place and then the building collapses on your head. Happens more often than you think. However, she now has 2 action points left. Now with those 2 action points she could drive the ambulance to a nearby area, or she could run back into the building and try and get over to this side. I think that's going to be her plan. So 1, 2, her final 2 action points, get back in the building, and hopefully we can get through this corridor and start looking at these things. She spent her bonus action point, so we put that back in the box. Now to advance the fire. Yay, great. Let's see if I can actually go one round without having a rotten explosion. 3 and 2. 2 and 3. Well, that was kind of close. There is a wall here which blocks adjacent spaces. I know it seems where is this wall, but think of it like an open plan building where there's a wall going across some of the area and then there's the gap, there's the opening here. So because this isn't adjacent, it just turns into a smoke. Fine for now, but it's dangerously close to more fire. So that wasn't too bad around. We now have the generalist. Now the generalist could stick around and start putting out some of this fire. However, if he remains in this corner, the driver operator here, when he drives around to this space, won't be able to fire in that space if the generalist is still hanging around. So the generalist is basically going to decide to move out of the corner and let the driver operator deal with the fire. It's a risky business because if he doesn't put out some of this fire, there's a chance it'll explode again. But that's the risk you have to decide as a team when you're playing this game, and this is the risk that they're willing to take. So he's going to head down, well in fact no, he's going to go into here and try to put out these two fires, because the problem with the water cannons is obviously, like most physics will tell you, water doesn't go through walls just like that. So these two are likely to be out of range of the cannon. So he's going to give the driver a hand and go after these two. One, straight through the destroyed wall, but he has to get out of this corner. So he's going to deal with this fire first, 2, 3, that's 3 action points he's now spent, and then 4, he's going to reduce that to a smoke, which he can do because it's not adjacent to the fire because there is a wall here, and then 5, 1, where he hops out of the corner so that this red dotted line is out of his range. In fact, let me just get the camera a minute. I'm going to show you that dotted line because you might be wondering where is it. There you go. You will notice the red dotted line branching off in different directions. That's because this is the center of the board and it is effectively where these things branch off. You will see that where, let's see if I can get the camera to swivel around here. Easier said than done. There we go. You can see that that's where the firefighter will put his vehicle. The red dotted line goes around that space and then travels across the building and comes back round and loops back to the firefighter spot. That is how you determine where the fire engine is able to shoot its water. Now to put the thing back where it was. Okay, so now the generalist has to advance the fire. 1 and 4. Phew, that was lucky. It's that space. Not likely to be taken out by the fire engine, but at least it's just a smoke. Nothing major. So now the fire engine. Actually, that's not what a fire engine sound makes. Sorry, that was completely worthless. It costs 2 action points to drive it to an adjacent side of the building. So, meow, boomp. If he wanted to drive the vehicle from that side to all the way to this edge of the building, then he would have to spend his entire turn doing it. Thankfully, I made preparations in the last turn. However, by driving there, it now means he's only got 1 shot left in order to get out some of this fire, so it better be a good roll. 6 black, 4 red. Now 6 black is over here, and 4 red is outside of the corner, so it's going to be nowhere near where he's shooting at. So we have to turn the dice over to the opposite sides, which makes this 6 into a 1, and the 4 into a 3. So now we have 1 and 3. That's a pretty bad roll because this wall will block any splash damage onto here and all we'll do is take out a smoke. Pretty bad roll. So I'm going to opt for re-rolling both dice. The driver operator can roll either or all dice to see where it hits. 3 is just rubbish. I need a 1 or a 2. And the 1 is pretty bad. Well, it's not too bad, but it could be better. I'm ideally trying to get a 2. I will settle for a 3 because that will have pretty much the same effect. As long as I don't get a 4, I'm okay. So we'll try again. 3, 1. So 3, 1. Now that's not too bad. I would settle for that. I would have preferred it to be a 2, but I'm not going to get too picky. So I'm going to let that slide. It lands in this space. Splash. It takes out adjacent ones as well. Splash and splash. So that's cut the problem down to a nice manageable size down there. However, there is still some fire, so the driver might want to stick around and deal with that. Let's see if he can avoid putting some fire back, though, with the advanced fire roll. 1 and 4. 1, 4, smoke. Not too bad. that can be dealt with, and it's relatively out of the way. So that's basically how the game will progress. Each firefighter will get his action point allowance on his turn, and then he will spend it however they like, putting out fires, saving victims, opening doors, repairing, carrying hazardous materials, carrying victims, that kind of thing, and performing their special abilities. At the end of each of their turn, they will advance the fire, which will obviously represent the fire spreading out of control, and then you carry on through the game until either the building collapses, or 4 victims die, or you rescue 7 victims. It's a great deal of fun, and this is essentially a typical base game experience level game on recruit difficulty. You can imagine that on higher difficulties it gets a lot more crazy. And it does, but it's highly recommended. And the family game is even simpler than this. So if you found this easy to follow, then tell me, I'm not telling lies here, the family game is ridiculously simple comparison to this. You don't have special roles, you don't have hotspots, you don't have that experience game setup phase that I went through earlier in the video. It's all done on the diagram for you. So if you just wanted to do this quickly with the kids, easy to pick up, easy to play, and I think kids get a blast out of this. I have seen kids play this game before at various tabletop day events lately, and they just love it. Kids like firefighters, kids like being able to make ambulance and fire engine noises and going around putting out fires. It's just something that ticks with them. I don't know what it is, but it ticks with me as well. Maybe that's just because I'm a child. Yeah, I'll probably go with that. Now, expansions do bring in extra rules, make it more complicated, but also more interactive and fun. You get things like fire doors and ladders and the optional variant for the fire engine and floor damage in one particular case. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can get with the expansions. Anyway, I'm digressing here. That's Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This concludes the how to play video for the base recruit difficulty experience game. I hope it's been informative to you, and if you're deciding on this game, then check out my reviews of the, I think my first review on the Broken Meeple actually was of this game, and I have reviewed Extreme Danger since then, and you will be seeing the Dangerous Waters review uploaded on the blog in the next week. So there's a lot of coverage I've given to this game, and you can also find my comments on the Extreme Danger expansion in my top 10 essential expansions list on BoardGameGeek, or as featured in the Broken Meeple podcast. I believe it was episode 15 or 14. I think it might have been 14 that it was in. Failing that, you can go on BoardGameGeek and look for it as a separate geek list. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or feedback, let me know. But for now, I'm off to record the podcast. So take care, and I'll see you next time.